Hello, hello. Good morning, afternoon, evening to everybody. Is everyone able to hear me? Please let me know either with a thumbs up or in the chat. Great, awesome. So we'll be getting started shortly. We'll be giving individuals just a quick moment to hop into the webinar, and then we will get started. There are a lot of amazing topics that we're excited to cover today, especially at this time of the year. Let me give others just a quick moment to join. Great, awesome. So we'll be getting started on today's webinar. And once again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. It's such a pleasure being here with everyone here today. My name is Dr. Erica, and I'm from Team IMG Helping Hands. And as I mentioned, today we're going to go over a very important topic with regards to matching. It is particularly important to be talking about this right now. We're going to be starting a new month. March is upon us, and that only means that we are reaching both the end of our match season of the 2025-2026, but at the same time, we are also going to be starting the 2026-2027 match season. So again, what better way to start the month than with a strong preparation? We want to ensure that everybody, we are as well prepared as possible. And as always here at IMG Helping Hands as well, we're always proud to bring you, again, the most up-to-date information, opportunities, activities, changes, and so forth. So again, with the new match season, with the new match year upon us, and with opportunities that bring you, we do want to talk about preparation for USMLE since it's such a vital topic. USMLE Prep in 2026. Today we're going to be talking about them. What strategies matter more, and how you can effectively use your learning strategies with the current advancements. And again, all of these as tools to have a solid foundation. Also with us today, we have our amazing and distinguished guest with us. We have our very own IMG Helping Hands team member here as well. We have Dr. Sanya. Dr. Sanya, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. Thank you for the lovely introduction, Dr. Erica. It's a pleasure to be a part of this webinar today, and I am excited to walk through all the participants through the USMLE journey in 2026.
Of course, of course. No, and thank you so much for being here, Dr. Sanya. Again, it is such a crucial time of the year. And I do want to firstly just remind everybody that where you're at in your journey, definitely keep going. We commend you, we applaud you, and we are here to support you in any way that we can. So again, even if it is the end of your match year, or if you're starting your new match year, again, having strong foundation, having a strong support system, we're always here to cheer you on and definitely continue going. We're always sending everybody our best wishes, whether you're starting or you're ending your match cycle. But with that in mind, in starting the match cycle, and again, since our main focus here is on the USMLE, what are some of the major changes that you can tell us, Dr. Sanya, about the USMLE in 2026?
All right. So just walking through the changes that have been happened in this year of 2026 with regards to specifically the step one. There's not been much change with regards to the structure. So the structure remains the same, which goes back to it being 7 blocks. All the details with 40 questions per block. There's going to be around 280 questions, it being an 8-hour day exam, the 45-minute breaks, and no returning back to blocks. The main significant thing that has been introduced in this year is going to be its emphasis on it being clinical vignette heavy. The other thing will be the fact that the questions would be integrated across multiple systems. So a question stem would be assessing you on multiple different systems, for example, cardiovascular, renal, and endocrine. So the entire kind of test taking has been, designed in a way that basic science is now tested through clinical thinking. So that's how the exam has evolved, dramatically in the specific 2026 year.
Awesome, awesome. And again, even though the STEP exam, the USMLE Step exam is still pass or fail, there is still a very strong emphasis in doing well and excelling, especially now with those changes that you mentioned, being able to maneuver and navigate through those clinical vignettes, being able to essentially synthesize and integrate those different concepts into your answers. It really seems like a lot that goes into, again, the STEP exam itself, taking a lot of preparation and so forth. And with the preparation in mind, what would you say could be some potential mistakes that individuals make when studying for the step 1, step 2?
Right. I'm glad that you brought this up, just given the fact that I see so many students, just, having that like of guidance, having that experience in dealing and achieving the results. I like to, term this as score killers when it comes to preparation for the step one. And again, there's plenty of them, and I'd like to go into it in a lot of detail, given that we have uh, step one aspirants here, and hopefully this is going to help them throughout their journey. So the number one thing that I want to highlight is the fact that everyone goes and gets overwhelmed with the amount of resources that are available out there. Now, again, yes, though there are multiple resources out there, you must be able to pick your course set and work around it, because too many resources, again, would end up having you overwhelmed, and you would not have a strong direction onto what you would be required to focus. Adding on to that, I would also like to bring up the fact that students during their course of preparation would delay, having the mixed block design in their UWorld. So they would stick to system-wise blocks where they're not really training their brain to be able to switch from topics which they would encounter in the actual exam setting. So for example, you can go in with systems that, perhaps go hand in hand. For example, if you're talking about neurology with psychiatry, or cardiovascular with respiratory, or endocrine system with reproductive system. So that way you are transitioning and training your brain for the real exam setting that you would be facing later on your test day. Um, Moving on with that, there's also the fact that how students tend to rely more on passive reading. So when they review the explanations, they're not necessarily grasping the content that they're required to do so. Again, it's just not about the speed. Rather, it's about quality studying. So, just being able to actually understand as to why this option is correct and why the certain options are wrong is very necessary in your preparation. And this is a common pitfall that I see in most students that they are sort of deficient on.
Mhm.
Another thing I'd like to add on is the fact that there's no error log sheet, my bad, which the way that I did it is, every time you're learning, you want to have like a record of the mistakes that you've made. And again, the way and the reason why we're doing this is because at the very end, we want to go back to the mistakes that we have done. We have like a whole list of mistakes that we've done. We know what our weak areas are, and this is now what I know I need to enhance in order to be able to strengthen my performance and score better on my step exam and increase my chances for passing, if that makes sense, right? So with that being said, again, as we know, it's not a sprint, rather it's a marathon. So we also want to be able to maintain that consistency. Most of the students, because they do not have a system in place, they would rather get burnt out early on in their studying phase, just because of the reason that they do not have a strategically organized schedule. So again, consistency also plays an important role wherein you're able to, keep up with the information that you're learning. You're also training your stamina that way, because on the exam day, though it's step one, you have it, differentiated within 7 different blocks. I would like to, think of it as you have 7 chances of performance rather than it being a one whole course exam. So I would say these are the common pitfalls that I have noticed in students.
Oh, wow, no, and I appreciate that you mentioned that, Dr. Sanya. Again, these are very important things to look out for, because at the end of the day, the USMLE Step exam can be a make or break moment, but likewise, that preparation can have a similar impact as well. However, I really like the way you describe the step exam to us, because yes, it is one exam, and like I said, that alone can sound very overwhelming, very intimidating, especially with the amount of blocks and the time invested in that one exam alone. But the way in which you phrased it, it's not just one collective performance, but 7 different opportunities to perform, and not just to perform but to excel. I think just really breaks it down and just really gives it, it feels like it gives me the reassurance. It motivates me. It doesn't make it seem as though it is one big mountain to undertake anymore. So definitely I appreciate the way in which you describe the STEP exam. It is very much so doable. But again, I do also appreciate what you mentioned, that even though it is an extensive exam, even though it is an extensive exam, would you say that would also translate to the studies as well? If the exam is quite lengthy, would you say that maybe studying about 10 plus hours a day would be efficient? And with all of the sources that you mentioned, I know it's good to have a customized array of options for individuals, but again, what is your take on that, Dr. Sania, with regards to the resources, with regards to the amount of time? Would you say that could necessarily equate and translate to either passing or failing?
Right. So with regards to, just studying long hours, I think students have this misconception where studying for a longer hours of time would help them translate into being more confident during their exam. However, I really want to emphasize on the fact that, like we say, we always, focus on quality over quantity, or in other terms, I would say it's the efficiency versus the volume that you have. So even though you would see someone studying for 10 hours a day, and at the end you would see, they would still not be scoring as well as they should be, given their studying timeline on their NBMEs or on their UWorld. It just comes from the fact that you do not have a proper schedule. And again, I will add on to that in a bit. But just let's be real, how many of you feel overwhelmed about where to start and if you're studying the right way, even if you're probably studying for longer hours? It's just the fact that you do not have a roadmap. You're not able to navigate through it. It's like, setting on sail, but you do not have a compass with you to navigate your direction. So we really want to be able to do that. So the way I would like to see it is, even if you're able to do it 10 hours of studying in 4 hours, but let's say with more efficiency, that's more than enough. You, in fact, need that in order to be able to keep your calm and composure, and also be prepared and do the most in the minimum amount of time, while also retaining the information you want. So for example, I would say most of the students who have this habit of studying for longer hours a day, the way they go about is that they would keep rereading, they would keep highlighting the first aid, they would just be reading off the explanations and not, incorporating active recalled spaced repetition in their studying. So this is where the kind of, the lack come from. So I would say the way they can go about this is, before starting, really assess their baseline as to where they stand. If you feel like, for example, you are at a point in your studying journey where you have all the necessary information you require, you just perhaps need a boost of information to be ready for the exam, or say you're perhaps a graduate wherein you've sort of lost touch with your basic sciences, and you feel like there's a need that you really want to go back and get a proper grip and hold of all the systems. So you need like a deep review. Just assessing that baseline at the very first of your starting journey would help you kind of navigate as to where you're, wanting to reach. So again, that's going to change your entire strategy on, how you would start and how much time it would take you and how you would be able to balance the resource. Like I said, there's a lot of resources out there. So you want to be able to pick the ones that you can actually stick with and not get burnt out in the entire process. So again, just certain points that I want to add when it comes to strategically learning. Like I said, active recall, there's space repetition. You also want to be having early integration of the mixed blocks, so you're actually mimicking the real exam setting. You also want to be studying in a way that's data driven. What I mean by the word, in fact, data driven, is that most of the time students would stress out on the scores that would show up and they would panic. I just want to, really put it out there that since this is your learning curve, you really do not want your scores to be peaked up. It's okay if they're plateaued or they're average or even below average, because this is your learning curve. So you want to be able to use that as your tracking a tracking material, actually like help you progress through your journey. And that's about how I would, ask students to, kind of incorporate the strategy over learning long hours.
Wow, got it, got it. And again, this is just to confirm when you mentioned the system based and so forth. This is for UWorld. Yes. Okay. Awesome. No. And again, active and passive learning. Do you have any recommendations with regards to those active passive learning resources?
Right, definitely. So I would like to sync in the two. So, UWorld, along with the active and passive learning. Before I get into it, I just want to take a moment to highlight the fact that most of the students perceive UWorld as being a question bank solely. And I want to really put it out there that it's not just a question bank, it's rather also a study material if it's incorporated the right way and early on during your studying journey. You do not just want to use it as a question bank, just as a mock test sessions. Okay, you really want to be able to utilize it to its full potential, where it's also aiding in your studying. Now, with regards to utilizing UWorld as an active and passive, just differentiating between those two aspects and how you can use active recall when it comes to UWorld. So there's different ways. Number one, there's one aspect when it comes to UWorld and how to be able to read those questions properly. And then once you've done your exams, you know that you have a question stem along with the answers and a page where it will show you the review, the entire review on why the answer is correct. It will tell you on what topic that specific question was assessing. Now, what most of the students don't do much or don't input much time is the fact on how to review them and even probably reviewing them. So they would just go about passively reading it off through the screen without actually understanding what's going on in the question. How you can use this as an active recall is, number one, you actually want to see why you chose the answer that you chose, right? So that would help you understand your reasoning behind that question. Say if you got the answer correct, or even if you got it wrong, regardless of that, you also want to be able to navigate through the other options and be able to establish a reasoning as to why the option was correct or wrong. Now, once you know, for example, that you have that question answered wrongly, and you know the topic that comes, for example, let's say the question was assessing about pericarditis. And like I mentioned earlier, you should be having a kind of error log where you're just noting down all the mistakes that you've encountered along through the way. So you can just write it down in your error logbook. Later on, during the course of time, perhaps the next day or like 2 days after, you can go back and probably have active recall of that. You can either go on utilize AI for this purpose, where you literally ask it to generate flashcards for you, or like one-liner question stems, or just assess your memory based on that. Or you can do that topic from Anki, or you can just use the teach back method where you're actually just teaching out that specific topic. So that's basically helping you actively recall that information, where you're actually putting your brain on spot and forcing it to retrieve the information that you've just learned off, right?
Yes, no, definitely. And with regards to UWorld, so again, UWorld is essentially the best of both worlds, the way I'm interpreting this then, because it is both an active learning tool in a sense that you are tested, you are being put on the spot to answer a question, and you are being able to see again the way you integrate your different systems and so forth. But at the same time, it is a passive resource in a sense that if you're, let's say, in tutor mode, if you have tutor mode enabled, you have those explanations that can guide you. You have that explanation. And I also like that additional component which you mentioned, where even though you have tutor mode and you have that passive component enabled, so to say, you in a way are also tracking to see whether, where your weaknesses are, where if perhaps you are missing a lot of questions on cardiology, because I know you do mention you recommend having a mixed system. Perhaps you're missing a lot of cardiology questions, perhaps you're missing embryo questions. You will be able to see that on the log. So I really like that. Again, that next step in establishing our study method and so forth, and using AI, using other passive and active tools such as flashcards. Again, it seems like an excellent way to just continue reinforcing that passive learning that you got from the answers in your UWorld. So it really does seem, again, we're starting to build off now, where we started, with our baseline, seeing where we're at. Now we're going to build off from that in using our study materials such as UWorld, such as Anki. If you're not too familiar or comfortable with Anki, perhaps using written out flashcards, or even asking AI to write those flashcards for you, like ChatGPT. Again, it's really making the most out of those study tools. And I think it's really important to really remember that, having those study tools. And again, we're still keeping it at both the strong fundamental, but also keeping it at a not one size fits all. Perhaps you might not need the flashcards to some extent. Perhaps you might need more flashcards rather than UWorld. So again, I really like the way we're establishing that, because again, at the end of the day, the step doesn't test the amount of hours you studied. It tests whether you can retrieve that information under pressure. So again, I do appreciate that you mentioned that, Dr. Sanya, also highlighting the time aspect, where again, for some individuals, this could take anywhere between 4 hours, perhaps 5 to 7. But again, an excessive amount of time could potentially lead to burnout as well, correct?
Exactly, yes. That's very true. You do not want to put yourself on spot like that, where you get burnt out with the way you're, using your resources and you have your structure organized. You want to be also be able to prioritize your mental health. Again, as we said, it's a marathon, so you have to train your brain into that way. The exam day, you're going to be sitting in for 8 hours. You're going to have short breaks in between. You don't want to crash out, your fifth block or seventh block. You want to be able to be ready and condition yourself for the exam for that day. And again, this is not going to be something that you incorporate in your study design at the very end of your studying. Rather, it has to be stepwise added on. So for example, say, as we're all aware, there's going to be like a phase 1 and phase 2, where your phase 1 is going to be your pre-dedicated period. Perhaps, the first 6 months, where you're just working on building the foundation for your step 1. And then the dedicated phase, which is going to be for around like 2 to 3 weeks or 2 to 4 weeks, we're actually sitting for the mock exams, which are the NBMEs. You are revising the information that your study is going through, the high yield stuff of the systems, just making sure you have it ready before the exam. Now again, you do not want to have NBMEs as your first sitting, where you're actually sitting in a long stretch of hours and doing the questions. You want to be able to have yourself trained that way. So the way you do it is, initially you start on with, say, doing 10 questions per day, and then you progress to doing 20, and then you keep adding on to 30, and then finally 1 block, and then adding on 2 blocks a day, and then 3 blocks a day, and then so on and so forth. That's how it goes. You also want to be able to take, more than one NBMEs, just to have that confidence and see your progress tracking. So that's how you build on your stamina, and you make sure that, I am ready to kind of sit for 8 hours to give in this exam, and without having that cognitive fatigue that would otherwise occur on the exam day.
You got it. No, and so as you mentioned, we're not going to start off from the get-go 5+ hours. Again, we're going to start with, again, our baseline, seeing where we're at, building ourselves up. First 10, 20, 30, and so forth questions, until, again, the number of questions in an NBME is manageable. That way, again, we prevent the most burnout possible. And once again, I do appreciate the resources that you mentioned to us, Dr. Sanya, with regards to, again, flashcards, with regards to UWorld, using it, again, in a shuffled format, most preferably using it in a block system as well to emulate the NBME, and also pointing out the fact that NBME tests are an excellent source as well. However, they should not be the primary source, but rather use them once we're a little more comfortable with UWorld, once we have some momentum going there, I really like that structure that you're developing, that system that you're developing. And with that in mind, Dr. Sanya, are there any other recommendations in maintaining that structure, in continuing that system that we have going on right now?
Right. Just when it comes to the structure in general, I would say there's so many aspects that come into play. It's not just about, uh, you know, just like for example, you know how the exam design is, you know what you would need, you know about the resources that are out there, but just to be able to kind of execute it all and be able to craft a schedule that fits you best again, is what really stands out. So just by the way, just keeping, this entire structure in mind is exactly why we designed the USMLE Impact Theory crash course. Uh, Over the years at IMG HH, we have realized how students were not failing because they were weak. Rather, it was because they were not, uh, having the system in place designed in a way that would help them navigate through it all, right? So the way we have designed the crash course on this USMLE Impact Theory program is to give you like a guided, integrated system, wise block structure where we integrate things all the way from embryology, moving towards anatomy, physiology, pathology, pathophysiology of certain, specific subtopics, and then finally wrapping up with pharmacology. So just tying it all in one aspect. Now, again, I also want to emphasize the fact that the way we've kind of built the structured model is that our tutors, synthesize this across different disciplines so you don't just memorize and you understand deeply. Going back to the fact that there's this resource hoarding where people shop between different resources and end up, being into too many. We have just stuck to one resource, which is first aid, and all of the, essential concepts and mechanisms that you would be required to understand the factual information presented in that book would be imparted, from the tutor, just culminating all of, say, the pathology, the clinical factors, the imaging, and all of that aspects when it comes to that certain topics. So in addition to it being a system-based approach, I also want to highlight the fact that we also have students, integrate AI as a dynamic study partner, just, helping how you can use AI to identify your weak areas, analyze the question patterns, be able to recognize your weak areas and be able to add upon that and help you refine them. In addition, it doesn't stop there. We also use real world analogies to help supplement the question and understanding for long-term retention and recall. There's also Kahoots and quizzes for active recall, spaced repetition in accordance, by the way, with the peers that you will be sitting at. So each time, these drills of these material blocks would help the students go back and assess as to where they stand in the system and how they have actually grasped the topic that they have. And it's just like a very nice way of having the concept revision, right? And just as a matter of fact, by the way, we are kicking off our genetics and biochemistry crash course later in early March. From the 4th of March, I will be happy to share the link in the chat box below for all of you guys to go over the details of the course. We have the agenda, the schedule all on the website, so please feel free to check it out. No matter where you stand, by the way, whatever stage you are, be it, third year, fourth year, a graduate, or even just a resident, just wanting to brush up your topics, the course would scaffold your knowledge and prepare you not just for the exam, but for your future as a physician as well. So this is exactly why I was, talking the entire thing about the structure. And just as a matter of fact, just want to share then put it out there.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Sanya. And it really seems like a good integration into an individual study plan. Again, we're here building what could ideally be a good structure for studying, in using UWorld, in using Anki, in maintaining that ideal balance of active and passive learning while maintaining a good, again, timeline for studying both daily in the short term and in the long term. And I really do appreciate that you share this link with us as well, because again, that program that IMG Helping Hands developed seems like it could be an excellent addition into an individual's study plan also. Again, I do appreciate that you mentioned that this is ideal for people of different levels, whether you are currently in your academics, and you're currently undergoing the organ system that we are going to be reviewing, if you are using this as a study resource for your USMLE prep, or even as a resident to brush up, I think it is very essential to take advantage of this opportunity. You mentioned a lot of system-based components. With regards to the timeline, what areas specifically are going to be studied? I know you mentioned that we're going to be starting a certain organ system in March. And how else is the USMLE Impact Theory course contributing to a student's study progress?
Right. So, yes, do we have anyone ask a question?
He sees.
All right. Right. So, yes, I do want to touch base on the fact how would the course help a student in their progress. Now, given that it's system based, we're also trying to link up similar systems, the way we kind of also want to put out the active recall and spaced repetition in those aspects. How it would help you in your progress is that you would be able to track by the end of the course on where you stand, what exactly you would need, from there on, and you would walk out of that course just being confident from the system that you just studied, which I believe is so crucial. So this is just a way to, help students during their pre-dedicated phase where they're actually wanting to lay down the foundation to be able to actually grasp the concepts and be confident when they go into the dedicated phase where they will just have to review the concepts and sit for their exams. So this way we're kind of, condensing the information which would have otherwise taken them a good chunk of time just, navigating through what resource suits best for me, just looking onto how do I navigate UWorld questions, how do I integrate AI into my exam. So this way, everything is in one place where we have just crafted a kind of schedule, the teaching pattern that you would receive, and this is going to help you throughout the course progress and help you identify your progress as well as to where you stand and what system perhaps sometimes you feel like I do understand the system, and that's just because perhaps you have that clinical familiarity with the UL questions that you do, or you have just done passive studying. So at that moment in time, you feel like, what, I'm actually confident with this area. But when you actually sit and that has been asked to you in a setting, or someone teaches in a different way, it just, rings bells like, oh my God, I perhaps did not look at it from a different perspective. And this is how I should have actually taken it. So it's going to be a way that it would actually help you identify your progress and lead you on from there on.
That's amazing. And so you have a guided individual who essentially helps you navigate through the content, the system-based content, but in a way that is tailored to the 2026 USMLE, where even though the review itself is going to be system-based, it is going to integrate and branch out into other systems as well. Is that correct?
Yes, definitely.
Nice, nice. So essentially, this would essentially make it ideal, as you mentioned, for those in the pre, or you mentioned the pre-dedicated phase, to start getting comfortable with the material before or as they're transitioning into the UWorld content, or as they're transitioning and getting more comfortable with the content to possibly even transition over to NBME exams. I think that is such an excellent way to approach it. Likewise, again, if perhaps you haven't seen content in a while, perhaps starting here, maybe you had a dedicated period but you had to pause, whether it would be a months long pause, maybe a couple months, or maybe even a couple of years. Would you still think this course would be ideal, again, for those who are maybe starting from square one once again, into possibly transitioning them over to that familiarization for the UWorld and the NBME exams?
Right. So going back to that point, no matter wherever you are at your starting line, we have designed it in a way that we do not want to be having superficial review where we just touch base on the topic and do not give you the required content that you would otherwise need for the exam. And on the flip side, we're not even diving as much deep as it would be unnecessarily required for you. So it's condensed in a way that you would walk out with the necessary information that you need in order to be able to answer the question exams, and also, follow through your career as a physician, right? So it's just like a way that we have, removed all the clutter. There's no fluff. It's just direct, very straightforward things that you actually need and require.
I love that, especially because wherever you're at in your educational journey, perhaps you are still a med student and you're preparing for your boards, or maybe you are undergoing your clinical rotations, and those alone can be very daunting and very heavy with responsibilities. After graduating, again, perhaps you are undergoing your job and personal responsibility. So it really is important to, if you're going to be integrating a program, if you're going to be integrating a system into your study structure, it's important to ensure that it works with your schedule. So I really like the fact, as you mentioned, Dr. Sanya, that there is no fluff. It goes straight to the point, to the foundational concepts that you need to really hop on back, either hop on in or hop on back on track, and just really get you started, kickstarting not only in that learning, but the confidence aspect as well, as you are tracking what exactly you're learning. So I think personally, yeah, I think if I was either a med student or an individual who has graduated but not yet taken the USMLE, that alone seems like an excellent integration into my study resources, which is excellent, Dr. Sanya. And I know you mentioned in the study course as well, in the impact theory course, there will be a lot of integration from different sources. Again, so we're kind of keeping a good middle ground where we do take advantage of the numerous resources without overwhelming the individuals. How do you mind going a little bit more into detail into how those resources are integrated to give you the most ideal approach?
Of course, definitely. So the way we go about it is that we really want to stick to one resource, which is going to be the first aid. Now, we do know that first aid is not a book wherein you actually study from. It does not have all the, breakdown of concepts that you require. Rather, it's more of a review book or a blueprint for the factual information that you require. But the concept, the reasoning, the mechanism behind it is something that you have to gain from the additional resources like NBME, Pathoma, so on and so forth, right? The way we go about it is that we have broken down the concepts that we will be teaching each and every day. And basically, that's what we term as first aid page mapping. So, for example, say we're talking about the reproductive system. So, the pages 1 to 50, for example, correspond to the female reproductive system, right? There's a lot of junk on there. Say there's going to be anatomy, embryo, so on and so forth. And you would perhaps require to, go onto different resources to grasp that information. But the tutor has condensed it all in a way from the most high yield that you would require to answer questions in that specific field and understand the exact mechanisms, the exact reasoning that would come behind that. So it's basically a tutor that would guide you through the entire concept behind that. At the same time, linking it with the first aid. So you would just have to go back to your first aid and just probably annotate in there, and you can have an active recall and go through actually what you've understood and what is the exact mechanism underlying that specific concept, right? And you can directly go on, jump into UWorld and apply that to test.
Oh, no, and that seems like such an amazing approach, Dr. Sanya, because again, in keeping that good middle ground of both taking advantage of all of the resources that are currently out there without overwhelming your schedule, I also feel perhaps that can impact and influence the amount of time somebody spends in their studying. Perhaps somebody is spending 10 plus hours, 12 plus hours studying, but it could possibly be that an amount or a certain extent of those hours are invested alone in organizing the resources. How am I going to integrate UWorld or first aid or these videos or those lectures? Just that alone, that organization alone, again, that development of structure alone is very timely and very tedious. Again, it's it's overwhelming to think about because there are a lot of resources nowadays. But again, I do feel it seems beneficial that having that tutor there who has already structured those resources in a very efficient way can also possibly even help you in cutting down that time where instead of having that 12, 16-hour study session, if a lot of the time was invested in searching for resources or trying to organize yourself with that tutor, that could essentially be reduced to a more ideal time frame for your daily life, correct?
Exactly, right. So I also want to touch base, like rightly mentioned, how would if I were a student, enrolling in this course, how would I be able to, juggle through the different resources out there, the tutoring sessions, and also UWorld. Now, the way that I mentioned that it's just the first aid book that you would necessarily require as that aid for the tutoring sessions, you technically just need that, right? As simple as that. Everything else, underlying that concepts mentioned in the first aid books, all of that is going to be covered by the tutor. So what you necessarily need at hand with you is going to be your first aid book along with your UWorld or any other question bank that you are using for your step one journey, Amboss or anything else in that sense, right? So that's how you have an understanding of everything that's going to be tested for that specific system within the first aid book, which is going to be supplemented by the tutor, and then you would have it applied in the UWorld to test your knowledge on that aspect. And the other ways where we, kind of supplement your studying is going to be via active recall and space repetition, which are again a part of the course. So everything is going to come hand in hand from the course in itself, right? Does that make sense?
Mhm. Yes, yes, definitely, definitely. And with regards to, I know you also mentioned with regards to that space repetition, that retrieval. I know everybody is using AI, ChatGPT. Again, that it's a new technology for everybody. And how I'm curious to know, will the USMLE impact theory also help in, or how will the USMLE impact theory integrate AI into studying, if you don't mind me asking?
Of course, it's great you brought it up, by the way. So we do help students, we help them identify how they can actually use AI to supplement their studies because uh, AI is a great tool, right? It definitely is something that's going to help supplement your studying in a way if you use it rightly. But so many students out there do not know how to utilize it to its full potential. The tutor would be guiding them on how they can use it in their studying journey. So for example, how past the tutoring sessions when they're reviewing the topic, how they can use AI for helping them, clarify certain mechanisms, creating visuals, or using any real world analogies, even as an active recall generator, also flashcard generator. Though there is Anki, like I mentioned, but Anki doesn't really work for everyone. Sometimes you really need to have that back and forth communication in order to be really get a good hold on the concept. So this is where AI comes into play. So you can just play around with that whole thing. But again, it really is necessary on what prompts you utilize and how you're going about using AI in general. And this is where the tutor would come into play, where he would help the students really understand and be able to use it the right way, right? The other thing I'd like to mention is when they're studying for their ULs, for example, or they're at a stage where they start for their NBMEs, they can also utilize AI to break down their scores, help identify their weak points, have like week sprints kind of thing with them where you're just going over all of the concepts that you are not that confident with. So this is where AI can help train you over there, right?
Wow, no, I think it's a very neat approach, and again, something very important to touch up on when it comes to that structure. Again, we're still maintaining that new integration of concepts, of resources, while not overwhelming. So again, I really do like that aspect and that approach. And I did have another question here, and I believe somebody else asked this as well. But with regards to those sessions from the USMLE Impact Theory, are they going to be pre-recorded? Are they going to be live sessions? Will we be able to review them afterwards, if you don't mind me asking, Dr. Sonia?
Yes, absolutely. So really encourage interactions between the tutor and the students, and we want to be able to maximize the benefits that they can get from the program. For that very sake, we have kept it live sessions. However, students, from different probably time zones, or if they have any clash with regards to their academic activities, there would be recorded sessions available for them, definitely.
Got it. So it will be a live session. Individuals, even though you are going to be receiving the guidance from your tutor, individuals will still be able to, come in, have a dynamic session with the tutor, ask them questions and so forth, correct?
Exactly, yes.
Wow, no, that's amazing. And are there any other features about that impact theory course that maybe perhaps I'm not sure if there are other questions that are really coming into mind at the moment, or if others may have questions regarding the impact theory. We're always happy to hear about everybody, listen into everyone's questions. Are there any other components, any other concepts about the impact theory course that are being offered?
Yes, another Right. So another aspect that I want to bring up in regards to the USMLE Impact Theory program is the emphasis on systems that are otherwise overlooked, So when it comes to the weighted, most of the students just tend to rely on the big chunks, the CVS system, the neurology system, thinking that they are highly weighted components on the exam. And though, yes, they are definitely, but you're necessarily missing out on the other systems which can give you free points and free access to the step one pass, right? So for example, like the biostatistics, ethics, microbiology, and all of these high yield principles, pathology in itself being a separate discipline by all alone. There's also immunology, public health sciences. So we are also taking this into consideration where we want to have crash course built around them, and this is what we're actively working on. And as I said, we have started off with the genetics and biochem again, which is not very highly given importance throughout the student's journey. But what we really want to emphasize is that these high yield principles are again what is setting your foundation for the foundation of your step one, right? So before you course and walking into the systems, you want to have your basics right in a way that you know what it means by the all the pathology mechanisms. You want to know what goes on in immunology, the genetics of certain different diseases, the microbiology as well, because all of these, little disciplines are tend to be overlooked quite easily, right? However, this would be the reason you quickly, are able to excel through your exam just because you've not overlooked them during your course of preparation. So this is how we are, trying to incorporate it and design a system where this all will also be imparted within the course.
I know, perfect. And thank you so much for letting us know about just the impact theory course, Dr. Sania, integrating that into our current studies. Again, I'm sure the impact theory course is going to be tailored to the content, the weightage and so forth, as individuals are mentioning here, with regards to the new 2026 structured. I know sometimes the exam itself can fluctuate in, let's say, 1 year. And any particular year could have a certain amount of questions, emphasize a little bit more on a certain organ system, emphasize a little bit more on a certain component, whether it is pharmacology, physiology, and so forth. So I'm really happy to hear that not only is it going to be an ideal resource to integrate into your studies, but the way that it is going to be tailored also to the new changes. Again, the reason why it was made, and I appreciate that this opportunity is available to individuals now. That way, again, individuals can stay up to date with their resources, with all of those that are currently out there. And there was something else that I did want to touch up on. I know the tracking aspect is excellent. I know for sure the organization and the way in which it's structured is really going to, again, even have a positive impact on the individual's mental health. So again, just really overall making the study experience. I know it is going to be heavy. It is a long journey. It is at the end of the day a marathon. But again, having this resource will definitely I'm sure will definitely increase the ease, increase the confidence and the approach in students approaching either practice questions, NBMEs, or the exam itself. So again, I do appreciate that you mentioned that, Dr. Sanya. And just kind of, moving on and moving on to after, again, the potentials of after the STEP exam. Let's say, because we have established an excellent study structure, starting from the beginning, starting from the baseline of assessing yourself to see where you're at, and using the active and passive resources such as UWorld, Anki, and now even possibly introducing and incorporating the USMLE impact theory. You have these three resources, so you don't have too many, you don't have too little, you have the right structure. You take the STEP exam, or if you are about to take the STEP exam, I understand. Again, this is overall it is a very holistic journey. While my question here now is, while individuals are studying for their STEP exam, should individuals prioritize other things, such as research, such as networking, such as any other particular components in their application? How do you recommend now moving outside of the exam from a more holistic approach, Dr. Sanya?
Of course, right. So, as we know, during your application process and the math journey, there are several aspects that come into play. You have your UWorld score, your STEP scores, research, US clinical experience. All of these factors, combine and translate into how your application is going to stand out there in front of the residency programs, right? But if we're specifically talking about how to kind of balance between studying for your steps and other academic extracurricular activities like research or anything within your universities or clinics and so on and so forth, I would say it's really a matter about prioritization. You really first of all want to understand where you're standing. I would say, for example, if you're in your pre-dedicated phase and you do have the time to balance it off with search and research, you can definitely go ahead and do that. But again, you also do not want to be able to invest yourself in too many things at once in a way that you end up with nothing, if that makes sense, right? So it's all right to be the last author on a paper whilst you're working on your steps as well, just to kind of balance it off that way. Again, when you're moving towards dedicated phase of studying, you do want to have your maximum focus on the revision aspect of the exam, because you would just be sitting for the exam in a few days, right? So you must have your focus over there, and you do not want to get distracted by all the other stuff, though they do hold importance in your application, yes. Now, as you said, it's very holistic approach, right? Again, we cannot forget the fact that step one acts as a filter for you during screening process. Even though it's pass fail, it's going to be a foundation for you as a screening filter. On top of that, it's also going to supplement or be the foundation for your step 2 CK exam. And as we said, step 2 CK now matters more than ever, given the fact that it's the only exam, which is numerical score based, and it's going to be the distinguishing factor between you and the other applicants throughout the math journey. So again, just the fact that you have all of these components, you still do want to prioritize in a way that you are not compromising on it.
Got it, got it. No, and thank you for letting us know of that, Dr. Sanya. Again, as we went throughout this conversation, throughout this webinar, and I do want to thank everybody for being here and providing your input, providing your questions. We started from zero, and now kind of building the ideal structure to go about the USMLE exam. Again, this is particularly about the exam taking experience. So again, starting with your benchmark, finding the proper study resources, such as UWorld primarily, Anki, and using the USMLE Impact Theory course from IMG Helping Hands to just really kind of bring both of them in together. Again, will really guide the individual through, again, the ideal USMLE preparation experience. again, it's just those three resources that we mentioned. We are not overwhelming individuals with now use this one, use that one, use the other one, because in the impact theory, any additional resources are compacted in a way that, again, do not overwhelm the individual. So it seems it's a good course of action to take. And then from now, a holistic approach. I do appreciate that you mentioned also, just really staying up to date also with those other activities that make you a holistic applicant, but really getting the big takeaway that at the end of the day, it's the USMLE, step one that opens the door for the step two, for additional opportunities. So this is essentially where everything can start too. This is our square one. And so this is why we want to ensure that we have as strong of a foundation as possible. I think it seems we established a pretty secure foundation. And hopping over here to the questions, I am seeing here again that individuals are curious to know on whether there are gaps. I know we definitely addressed that in our talk today. So thank you again, Gloria, for asking this. If you're starting from a study gap, can you take part in this course? Definitely, you can do so. Again, the roadmap, I am going here through the comments, and I do want to again thank everybody for making this a very dynamic session, whether they're questions, whether they're comments, whether they're conversations that were being had here in the comment section. I'm really happy that we can all come together and just really be of support to one another, again, helping each other throughout the match journey. So again, thank you everybody for their input. Let me just take a quick moment to go through these questions as well. I am seeing here that Shafiq, you did sit the exam. We do want to also wish you the best of luck, Shafiq, again. And I do appreciate that you shared about your experience as well. Again, it's important. Again, just at the end of the day, all of us coming together, sharing our experiences, sharing what we know, and establishing a good foundation for those who are going to start or to continue their journey, in the instance that it also includes the steps. So again, thank you for letting us know of this. Isaac, also your comments, thank you. And we did get an update here on the a general breakdown here in the comments. I will be pinning this here for those who are interested in. Let me see if I can pin it. Yes, here. So I will be pinning this, and this is the most up-to-date news that we have regarding the steps. Again, as we mentioned, they are going to have more of an integration-based approach. So again, if you want more information, I did pin that comment. Definitely save that image. Definitely keep that in mind when it comes to your studying and to the system, your breakdown and so forth of your study plan. And again, the impact series approach. Another quick question that I had, and somebody I believe mentioned here also, with the questions that you can ask the tutor in coming together with the study group, it also seems like this is also a good accountability system as well, correct, Dr. Sanya?
Right, exactly. All of these components that we want to enhance.
It's perfect. No, and thank you so much, Dr. Sanya. Again, I am just going here through the questions, the comments, and again, I appreciate everybody once again. Are there any last words, any last takeaways that you want to provide, Dr. Sanya, to the students, either those who have just finished their USMLE journey or are about to start it, regardless of where they're at? Is there anything you would like to share before we conclude this webinar?
Right. So the main takeaway that I want all the participants to take from this webinar is, number one, please prepare strategically. If your preparation is structured, that's how your confidence will follow. So take a moment to actually sit down with yourself, assess your baseline, and have a structure that you can actually commit to and not burn out, and actually be able to follow through it, along your journey.
No, thank you so much once again, Dr. Sanya. And again, I do want to thank everybody for being here with us. Thank you so much, Dr. Sanya, for this invaluable information, essentially building up the ideal study structure. Maintain that structure in your studies as you are preparing and undergoing your step one preparation. I really like seeing the individuals, the enthusiasm here from individuals who have taken the exam and who are taking the exam. Again, I do believe this is a good ending point. This is a good place where we can end our webinar. And once again, we will definitely be keeping you up to date with regards to more opportunities. This here again was to build your USMLE preparation structure. Again, it is not a one size all fits approach, but we do want to again just really reinforce and really reinstate that the foundation of structure. So whether you're using other resources, you're integrating the USMLE Impact course, or whichever resource that you use, ensure that you are studying with structure, you're studying with intention for any other changes such as biostats, such as ethics and so forth. I do know that IMG Helping Hands also offers, they at times have biostats opportunities as well. Definitely do get in touch with IMG Helping Hands. I did also pin here the chat so that you can get in touch with us for any other particular resources or any other guidance that you may need. So again, I do want to thank everybody once again. I will be concluding this webinar now. And as always, we will see you on the next one. Thank you again, everybody, and I hope you continue having a wonderful day, wonderful afternoon, or evening as well.
Thank you, everyone.